So this is a 32-year-old biracial African-American and Korean female. This is a woman who never really processed issues of race. And just, I think her socioeconomic privilege just, kind of protected her in her mind initially, but there were clearly things that were hard for her to manage emotionally that kind of propelled her into the abuse of alcohol. But what we began, she came to therapy actually saying, I'm finding myself being really reactive to issues of race. And that hasn't been true in my life, right? And I need to figure this out because I just want, to just scream at people a lot. Right? So we just, again, initially just started talking through her experiences. She was very critical of herself for her reactivity, but also knew that there were things that had not been explored around issues of race in her life. She found herself, very sensitive to racism in the media at all levels of analysis. So from kind of larger socio-political issues to kind of issues that she witnessed. And then not just in the media, but in her own experience. Now, of course, we know with the social media, if a video goes viral, we potentially get exposed to it over and over and over again because it shows up everywhere. So incidents of racial violence, she would watch stories and, just was continuously being triggered by these things. But really where it came to a head was her children came of school age, and she enrolled them in private, predominantly white private school. And her world then was surrounded by predominantly white, very privileged communities. And, she initially was feeling some commonality. But over time, her sense was that there were some, kind of ways of interacting with her that were devaluing, that were kind of expecting her to kind of be more stereotypical. And then her children were having some not so positive experiences and that she was reacting to. So she initially was aware that she was being triggered, that someone could say something and she would feel a surge of anger, or she would feel a surge of resentment. But she hadn't explored this stuff before, right? So this is sort of a different presentation of emotional triggers, but it was just as intense for her that it interfered with her relationships. It interfered with her sense of safety and well-being in the world. And so part of the work with dealing with emotional triggers is giving some validity to where they come from, that real things happen that wound us. Right. And if we don't care for the wound, it can become infected, or it can stay open and unhealed. And she had never really cared for the wounds that racism had kind of taken in her life and had imposed in her life. She hadn't attended to those, right? They had gotten uncared for. So it was a process of recognizing some of the roots of her woundedness at those multiple levels of analysis. So looking at kind of her familial and interpersonal, the death of her father, those sorts of things, looking at the experiences in society and sort of some of the ways she felt wounded by stereotypes and prejudice and racism, all of which had not been processed. So really, again, accepting that these reactivity, right, was there for a reason. It didn't come from nowhere, that she wasn't just a crazy woman. Right, that these reactions had a basis in her life experience personally and in the collective experience as a person of color, as an African American, biracial African American Korean woman. was started to be really important in addition to these awareness processes of exploring, sort of where her reactivity was coming from and some of the origins of it, both personally and societally, was beginning to encourage her to speak about this more and join conversation and community with others who had similar experiences, right? Who had similar wounds, who could say, yeah, that happened to me, or yeah, that triggers me also. She didn't want to just, kind of make it her individual issue. That part of what was healing for her was seeing it as a collective issue and becoming more involved in groups and in organizations where she could bond with people and get affirmed, right? Which is part of the caring for the wound, right? So that it begins to heal when we feel a sense of connection and commonality and shared experience with others. And so she became less reactive to issues of racism and more in a place of being responsive. So it affirmed that there was a reason for her reactivity. We didn't want to just dismiss it like it's just a personal problem, that it wasn't just a personal problem, that there were layers to that reactivity, and then give her some agency of, if I see this as a problem, as unfairness, as ignorance, as, however, the ways that she considered it, how can I respond to this rather than react to it? And again, increasing a sense of agency, bringing in that, awareness, allies, action, bringing in the action piece of what can I do then? What are some of the choices that I can do engaging in the world around this trigger? So both attending to the wound and caring for the wound and attending to the conditions that created the wound. Right, so that one can be more active and feel that sense of agency. And both of those things help to reduce the reactivity.